Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another week, episode 11 of the Life on 11 podcast. Today, Jeremy and I continue our conversation from last week about peace and talk about how peace extends past just violence and weapons and things like that. So without further ado, let's take it to 11. What's going on, Jeremy? How are you this fine evening?
I'm doing fabulous.
A little soggy outside.
It's been very soggy the past 2 days, but, you know.
We'll take it, though. We'll take it.
It does make for some enjoyable evenings of just chilling on the couch and watching a little basketball.
A little tube.
Yeah.
NBA playoffs, full swing.
Full swing.
You know, I love NBA playoff time. That's what
I've enjoyed it, too. I haven't watched a lot of NBA playoffs in the past, but I've enjoyed this year.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Somebody, Tyrese Halliburton took some people's comments personally, dog. They took
no doubt.
They called him the most overrated player in the NBA just a few months ago, and he's like, you know what?
He's been balling out.
Take this. 35, 12, and 15 last night, no turnovers.
That's pretty good.
First player ever in NBA playoffs to have that stat
line. All right, hold on, time out. Are they taking every person's stat line and looking at it and seeing if it's ever been done before?
I think what it was is, don't quote me on this, I think it was first triple-double with no turnovers.
Oh.
That's what I interpret that to mean.
Okay. You know, I mean, because you could be like, hey, this is the first guy ever to score 1 point and have 1 block.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
From what I did not dive deep, from what I saw reading through.
Okay, well, that is your mission before the next podcast.
Okay.
To get me all of that information.
Okay, you got it.
Okay.
You got it. And, Of course, you got Oklahoma City. My kids are all about the SGA, so they're happy as larks. So, yeah. But other than NBA playoffs, how in the world has your week been?
Oh, man, it's been good. It was a very busy Memorial Day weekend. Had a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Friday night, had a little cookout. And then went and saw some soccer, and then Saturday morning barbecued the best chicken in the Shenandoah Valley.
Without a question.
No doubt about it. If you didn't get any, that's your loss because it's amazing.
Barbecue chicken. You need to get up
Absolutely the best. Then I took a 3-hour nap.
A 3-hour nap.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And I don't remember what I did Saturday evening.
Well, because you were still recovering from your 3-hour
I did something.
nap.
I don't remember what it was. Sunday church, and then good lunch with friends, and then had a little date night on Sunday night, which was pretty fun, and then a cookout again on Monday. So yeah, it was good, busy.
You ate.
Busy.
You ate like a king.
I definitely ate like a king.
Yes.
But, I mean, that's no different than any other time.
Let's talk about this date night.
Yeah.
It was a double date night.
It was.
You and your missus.
Yep.
Me and mine.
Yep.
We experienced for Jess and I the first time of an escape room.
Oh, yeah.
You and Tara done it before.
Well, the funny thing is we hadn't done it together before.
Okay.
That was the first time we had done one together.
Okay.
We'd each done them separately with other people.
And we went to the one in Harrisonburg.
Escapism.
We did Shot Caller.
Which
is supposed to be a 60-minute escape room.
Got to break out of prison.
Yeah. I mean, only the third time. So, pretty much a pro at this point.
We didn't look like pros.
No, well, we got out.
We did get out.
Made the record show. We escaped.
We did escape.
And as I recall, the gentleman said that not only were we one of the first, so it was 2 rooms, you had to get out of the cell, and then you had to get out of the guard's office or whatever. He said that we were not just one of the fastest that day, but one of the fastest teams through the cell that he had ever seen.
Yep.
We were blazing.
We were blazing. We definitely got held up when we got into the guard's office.
Yeah.
It definitely clues got harder. And one of the clues got pretty dumb.
Yeah, that was
a dumb clue.
The last clue was pretty stupid.
Yeah.
In Jesus' name. I mean that with all the love in the world. It was a great experience.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I want to do it again.
I absolutely want to do it again.
So shout out to Escapism in Harrisonburg.
Go check them out.
If you're local to the area, go check them out. If you have never done an escape room before, I'm going to say that's a great date night opportunity.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Probably a double date. I don't know.
It'd be better, yeah.
If you do it just with your spouse, marital counseling might need to happen afterwards.
Yeah, that could be.
Yeah, but it's good. It's good. Yeah, and yeah, like you said, great service on Sunday. It was a great day.
Yep.
It was a great day.
Yep.
We want to continue our conversation from last week. So if you have not listened to last week's episode, when
Go
we
ahead
got
and
together,
press pause
right.
and go listen to that first.
and then come back, right? Come back.
And you're back. Okay.
Okay. We sat down and talked with Scott Harris from Greenmount CBC, and Scott told us his story about peacemaking. And we specifically asked Scott to come on the podcast, talk about peace because of his story of
his journey to peace, which I really appreciated everything Scott had to say. There were quite a few things that he said that, quite honestly, I had never really thought that hard about. So it was really, really good to hear him, what he had to say. It was, I enjoyed it a lot.
And I've known Scott for a few years now, and I heard pieces. I hadn't heard the story about the EMU thing with the roommate.
Okay.
I'd heard pieces of his story, but I'd never heard it all in one sitting. And so that was really good for me to hear that, and really have an appreciation for his journey and where he's come out at. But we want to continue that conversation tonight, because I feel like we only scratched the surface, really, of what peace can mean.
He would probably agree with that.
Absolutely. And we've already said to Scott, we would love to have him back on again,
for sure,
to talk. But all that to be said, we want to talk about some aspects of peace that are beyond violence and weapons and firearms and all of those. Like, that to me is the hot button ways that we talk about peace.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way most like he said, all the Miss Americas talk about world peace. We want world peace. Well, they mean just no violence is what they mean.
Right. And God's peace is about more than the absence of violence.
Correct.
So what for you, Jeremy, do you think, like, as somebody who thinks about peace with Christ, like, have you thought about other aspects of peace and what they mean to you?
Yeah. So for me, when I think about peace, the first thing that comes to my mind is just like a peace within your soul, with what is happening in your life, so to speak. And the best way I can describe this is, for those who don't know, our son Riley was born with a heart defect. Our first child, really don't know what to expect, becoming parents for the first time, and then get this curveball thrown at us. Everybody is like, oh, this has to be like terrifying, the worst experience of your life, this and that. But Tara and I really had just a sense of peace, and it's only through God that we had that peace, just knowing that he had everything under control. So just the peace within our souls, within our hearts, that whatever happened was going to be okay. Unfortunately, he's 14 years old. He's doing great.
He is one of the coolest human beings. Riley is one of my favorite human beings on the planet. I love Riley.
If you haven't met Riley, you won't forget him.
I've got a ton of good Riley stories.
Oh, yeah. There's a great one from just the other day where he crashed his tricycle, not really tricycle, like trike thing.
Yeah.
Didn't even cry.
Yeah.
Got himself all tore up.
I would have been.
Tore up.
Yeah. I'd have been laying in the driveway like a shriveled mess.
You'd probably still be laying there crying.
Probably so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, seriously. So for me, when I think about peace, that's completely different than the violence type of peace, but just being at peace with what's happening in life, knowing that whichever direction it goes, God is in control and it's going to be okay.
Absolutely. When I think about peace, the term, and I have to say, part of this is the influence of the last 20 years of being brethren my whole life, but especially, like we talked about, like, that wasn't a big part of my upbringing. And then especially when I went to seminary. So I went to Bethany Seminary, where peace is a big part of their program. Like that's a big part.
Okay.
And I would say my understanding of peace was probably different than a lot of my fellow seminarians. So there was a lot of challenging conversations for me there. But the two words that I took away from my seminary experience, having to talk about peace a lot, was human flourishing.
Ooh.
And that for me is the foundational thought about peace, that peace is God's best for all of God's creation all the time. And so when somebody asks me, like, what does peace mean to you? Realistically, violence is just a very small piece of what that is. Because if you were to ask me, I think most of us can live the rest of our lives and not really have to worry about violence in our personal lives that much.
I would agree. Here in the United States, especially. I mean, and where we live, I mean,
right. I mean,
agreed.
Most of the scenarios that we're like, someone is gonna, that you have to take physical.
Yeah, we're not talking about somebody yelling at you at the stoplight. We're talking about like legit,
right?
Like
physical,
violence.
Right.
Yeah, physical
like,
altercations.
I could probably go the rest of my life and never have to discharge a firearm at someone. I hopefully can go the rest of my life and never get in a fist fight. So that to me is a very small part of what it actually means to live peace, because I think most of us, especially in our context, can live that kind of peace pretty realistically, in my opinion. So for me, peace becomes more about how do we advocate and bring God's best to all of creation all the time. And that begins to expand the conversation way past.
Oh yeah, way beyond violence, for sure.
And I will say, like, human flourishing sounds like a super progressive term. Like
it does, but
it's not. Like, I would say, because I've said that before and other people are like, but when you think about it, it's not. It's a super gospel, really, because Jesus brought peace with God through his sacrifice on the cross and his resurrection from the dead. He brought peace with God through his preaching and trying to get folks to live lives that were holy and more in line with God's will. He brought God's peace by doing healings and miracles and raising people from the dead and healing the blind. Like, all his whole message was human flourishing at some level. Like, everything Jesus ever commanded comes out for everyone involved to be better. There's not a situation where Jesus taught anything that made a human being less. It always made a human being more. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, that absolutely makes sense. Yeah.
And so, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so how, I'm going to go ahead and bring this up as a pastor, how do you, because a lot of times you're getting involved in someone's life in a difficult time, more often than not. So how do you, as a pastor, help them find what's the best for them, God's best for them? How do you help them find that, especially in difficult times?
Yeah. A lot of it is the scriptural discernment of pressing into what scripture says about us. But then also, like, a lot of times, my ministry, I don't know how other pastors are because I've never been another pastor.
Wait a second.
I know. There's a lot of times that I find myself getting involved with just some practical decisions, like just trying to help folks make practical decisions for God's best for them and their family.
Okay.
And really trying to recast how that decision either brings blessing to them and the people around them or not. So, like, a conversation I was having with someone last week as they were, trying to decide God's will for them and possibly relocating their home and possibly moving. And so, I mean, it was like, how do you see God's best for you in this situation? All the way down to, like, the money. Like, are you putting yourself in a financial stronghold to where you're not going to be able to, you're going to be stressed about money with the home you're looking to buy? Like, have you thought about that? Have you thought about, the place you're going to purchase? Like, have you thought about how it would impact your time with your family and all those things? And so it was more just about, like, is this house better than the house they lived? Absolutely, it was better than the house they lived in. But at the end of the conversation, they're like, man, like, I feel like I would take on a lot of extra stress in my life purchasing this particular property. And I don't know that I want to take that on for me and my family. And I'm like, hey, I'm not telling you not to buy the house. I'm just asking those questions to really think about, like, is this God's best for you? Because just because it has 2 more bedrooms and 5 more acres doesn't necessarily mean it's God's best for you.
True. Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that does make sense.
And I think practically one of the things I shared with you earlier was, for Jess and I, becoming foster parents is peacemaking for us.
Okay.
Because we are given the opportunity for these children who are living really in the depths of hell. I mean, they are living the worst situations that a human being can live with. And we are able to bring them to our home and provide for them a safe home, a loving home. We are able to bring, them a sense of security And then like we do rehabilitative foster care. So
Okay.
we are trying to give those kids the tools to flourish here so that if and when they go back home or they go to another family, they have tools to live the best lives that they can. So for us, we don't just approach foster care to say, you're just going to live with us forever. We approach foster care to say, how do we help you live a better life and give you tools and training? So for us, human flourishing looks like that. It's taking a kid who's in a really busted up situation, bringing them to our home and helping them live out God's best in our home so they can take it somewhere else. That's peacemaking to me.
Yeah. So that brings me to another question. In all these situations where we're trying to help others discern God's best for them, help them find peace, how do you work with someone who is clearly not making the decisions that are best for them, and clearly seeing them fight against everything that could be bringing them peace? How do you, because I mean that's got to be hard to watch.
Oh, it is. It's extremely hard to watch, I think, for any of us. And I think we're all faced with that, right? Like if you're a parent, you see your child make decisions that are definitely not the best for them. You know, if you are, you know, just any place in our lives, I think we do. And like I've always said, my job is to preach and teach and to bring God's best to whatever situation I can. And if that person doesn't decide to follow that, that doesn't release me from my responsibility to bring God's peace into the situation.
Sure.
So just if they don't decide, like let's say that I had this conversation with this person, like, nope, I'm absolutely going to buy this home and this is what I want. And even if my opinion is like, dude, that's a bad decision. Like I don't get left off the hook because they didn't choose it. Right. It's still for me to continue to bring God's best into the situation and continue to push them towards whatever God wants for them in the meantime. Right. And we've seen that in foster care. Like we're living that right now with one of our very close, one of our kids, you know, that he's making decisions that are outside of God's will. And you know, firsthand, you and I have had some off the book conversations. It is so frustrating. Like I feel like I'm beating my head against the wall, but then I see him and I'm like, I still have to bring God's best in the situation, even though I know you're not going to listen to it. And I know that you're getting frustrated at me and I'm getting frustrated telling you, but I still have this burden to say like, this is not God's best for you. You can still change this, right?
Yeah.
You can still find something better. And I think, you know, for us as Christians, like it's all of it, like digging wells in Haiti. It's peacemaking, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't have clean drinking water. And if we have the necessity or we have the means to make that happen,
absolutely,
peacemaking is saying, hey, like let's go drill a well in Haiti because we're bringing some of God's character and God's best to a community because we have the means to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Can you think of like areas in your life you're thinking about?
I'm just trying to think of how different our lives could be if really, to go back to a little bit of your sermon from Sunday, if just one person is helping others to find peace and they go help 5 more people, and it just how much everybody's life gets better,
right? Because
they're seeking God's peace, what's best for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that just completely changes our world. You know, we all think that, oh, I'm just one person, I can't make a difference. Really, we can just by sharing God's love and helping guide others to God's peace through what's best for them.
Absolutely. Well, and so I know this might be the most controversial thing I've said on. Hey, if we're 11 episodes in and this is the most controversial thing I've said,
we're doing okay.
We're doing okay.
Go ahead and let it out.
If Christians did what Christians were called to do in the area of peacemaking, then we would have no need for the social service sector of the government.
Yeah, I can agree 100% with that.
Right. And so,
I mean, it's literally been that way, I mean, since the beginning.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. What was, when all the USA and all that stuff was getting shut down earlier this year?
I'm not sure.
When Elon was doing his thing, and
when they were shutting down all the things.
Yeah.
Okay. Doge. Yeah, whatever it was.
And when all that was going down, and they were cutting off like humanitarian aid and stuff like that. Like I remember saying to people, like, "Hey, here's an idea. If the church steps up and does what the church is supposed to do, then
Exactly.
We wouldn't need that stuff.
Exactly.
Right? If we were agents of God's shalom.
Yep. Agents of peace, like we talked about last week. Yep.
If we were doing what we wanted to do, what we're called to do, then there would be no need. And like, I remember specifically having a conversation with some friends that they had some friends that were doing a humanitarian effort, and they were afraid that they weren't going to be able to get home because the funding was cut. And I was like, well, here's an idea. Why doesn't the church pay to get them home?
Exactly.
And they just kind of looked at me, and I was like, if you are that concerned, pay for the plane tickets.
Exactly.
And get them home. Like, we are contracting out the government to bring human flourishing.
Yes, I have argued this point with so many people over the years. It is not the government's job to do, like you said, these things. The church is called to do these things.
Right.
And like you said, we're subcontracting the government at a ridiculous rate too, not to mention. Yeah, I mean, it's the church's job to facilitate human flourishing. That is the church's job,
right?
Not the government's job,
right? If someone from our church comes to me and says, I have a need, I don't say to them like, well, let's call our state senator. Like, I'm like, let's the church rise up.
Yep.
Let's do this and let's help this person. And that's an agent of the gospel.
Yep.
Right.
I agree.
And boy, we get on a whole rabbit.
Oh my God, we're already there.
I know. One of the things that infuriates me is when the church looks at those humanitarian efforts only in means of evangelism. So we'll help as long as there's like evangelism results from it. Now, I do, like, one of the things, we support Samaritan's Purse.
Yep.
And I love the fact that they overtly talk about Jesus, right? They overtly help in Jesus' name. They overtly will give a Bible. They will pray. They will do all the things, right? But if we do a humanitarian effort, let's say that we decide, I read this really cool story a few years ago about this church had a bunch of money and they were really concerned about, free lunches and student balances at their kids' schools. They went in and paid off every overdue lunch account at the school.
Okay. Interesting.
It just paid off the balance. And that way every kid had a zero balance on their lunch. If no one ever came to church over that, no one ever came to their church because of that, that still was bringing the gospel.
Agreed.
Right. We don't have to, we can't look at every opportunity to provide human flourishing that it has to translate to a butt in a pew. And I hate it when churches do that. Like, their means for doing the right thing is, well, if we do this, maybe somebody will come to church.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why don't we just do it? Because that's what Jesus told us to do. I don't know. There's a novel idea.
Everything's about numbers now. I mean,
absolutely.
Really, everything is about numbers.
Absolutely. And I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, it would be awesome. Nothing would make me feel better than we did this thing for a group of 100 people and 20 of them came to church and they accepted Jesus. That's amazing. That's awesome. But if they didn't, we are not responsible. Like, we don't get off the hook for bringing God's peace if nobody shows up to church because of it. Like, we are called to be God, like, put on the shoes of peace, right? We are called to go be the messengers and deliver the truth. That's our job. It's not to be judged on the results of doing said job, because well done, thou good and faithful servant is because we did it.
Listen, what better job to have, really, than to, not be judged by the results?
Right.
I mean,
right.
What other job can you have where you're not going to be judged by your results? Exactly. None.
Politics.
Well, okay.
Sorry.
All right. No. We almost started that train a second ago, and you're trying to start it up again.
My bad.
I was going to say meteorologist, but
okay. Woo-hoo. So, and I know, like, you and I talked about this, like, dream retirement scenario, right? Is to be wealthy enough in retirement to be able to just basically contract out your life for free.
Yes.
Like, I would love, Jess and I have talked about that. Like, we would love to be financially stable enough to where we would be able to either, whether that's pastorally, go to a church and say, I don't need a salary. Let's use it for something else. Or to, you've talked about just be able to say, I am available to do whatever to help somebody in need.
I'm going to come install your dishwasher.
Right. We can help fix your leaky roof.
Yep.
We can, whatever.
Absolutely.
It is.
I would love it.
Yeah. And like, to me, that's one of those dream scenarios. Right. And I think, even that, like, for Jess and I, a lot of the decisions we make as a household aren't just about us. It's also like, how can this help the people around us to better their lives? One of my favorite things, I bought a 2-post lift for my garage 3 years ago.
Good grief. Has it been that long?
It's been a while.
Time flies way too fast.
And like, one of my number one reasons for buying a lift wasn't just for John. It was so that people I know that couldn't necessarily afford mechanic bills could either come over here and do the work, or I could help them do the work. So, I mean, tomorrow night I have somebody coming by and we're just going to throw his car up on the lift and see what's going on and see what's happening before we can see it and address it, and before he has to put out a couple $1,000s to go to a mechanic. And if it's a job that we can't do, then at least he knows that. But if it's something we can take care of, we'll take care of it.
Absolutely.
And to me, that's part of doing your best for your neighbor.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Sharing God's peace.
Yeah. And by the way, we can talk about Jesus while we're doing it.
Absolutely. Is there food involved?
There's always.
Absolutely. There's got to be food involved.
Always
Now, that is a way to spread God's peace, is through some food. You know what I'm saying?
Barbecue chicken.
Exactly. Dude, Mount Sinai barbecue chicken. You nailed it right there.
We're done.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah. Well, and just like, I think we forget when you talk about the agents of peace with Scott, like, if we are living what God has for us, like, the spiritual atmosphere of any place should change when we are present.
Yes. Agreed.
And let's be honest, like, sometimes Christians don't always have that effect on people.
That is true. Now, we are still human.
We are still human.
But you're right. That does need to be that should be our goal.
Right. I mean, me and the kids, Aiden and Elijah and I talk about this like all the time. I wouldn't say it's 100% of the time, but a majority of the time when I am out at a restaurant or I'm in the Walmart checkout line or whatever, like, I actually try to have a conversation with cashiers, and like, because to me, that's bringing God's peace. Mm-hmm. Like, just trying to be a smiling face, just trying to be somebody else than the last person who lectured them because their eggs cost too much money or their bag broke when they were going out to, or whatever it is. Like, just trying to be somebody who is, like, we laugh, we'll go out places and we'll often say, like, to the waitress, like, we promise you will not have a better table than us all night. And while
what are you talking about? We don't go out to eat.
Yeah, that's true. We say that tongue in cheek, but I actually mean it. Like, I want you to enjoy. Yeah. Being, like, I want you to enjoy me as a customer, and then there's all kinds of times we get to have conversations about faith, about that. I don't know how many times people are like, "Oh, what do you guys work together? Oh, we go to church together," and we're able to talk to them, about all that. Like, that's how it should. Like, that to me is God's peace. That I know I've asked a question in a sermon before. Like, if you moved out of your home, would your neighborhood notice that you're gone?
I only have one neighbor.
That is true. Or would your street, like, people would people notice if the son
I would like to think yes.
Yeah, I
would like to think so.
Yeah. So if God called your family to move to Missouri, I think there would be people in our community in Broadway that would notice you were gone. Fat boys, because they would lose your business, and that's a lot
of business, no doubt about it.
But like, that's always that question. And then we could ask the same question about churches. Whatever church you go to, if your church were to shut its doors tomorrow, would your community feel a difference? Like, would anyone even notice that you're not there anymore? And that tells a lot about how you're living out God's peace.
That's good. That's a really good way to look at it. Never thought about it quite like that.
Yeah. It's interesting. So how are you live out God's peace in your life? We'd love to hear that from you. You comment.
Yeah, comment. Send us a message.
Yeah. Maybe we'll have you on the podcast to tell your story about how you're...
Join us for a late night meal at Waffle House sometime.
Absolutely. A late night meal at Waffle House, an early evening meal at Fat Boys, medium meal at B-Dubs.
Hey, won't be too long, and we can have a meal at Sheets.
Oh, man,
y'all. Right down the road.
Y'all don't know, man. There's a Sheets that's about to open up like 5 miles from my house.
Oh, dude, it's not even 5 miles.
And
it's like 2 miles.
It's going to be on. I'm going to have a charge account. Like, it's going to be like Cheers.
Hey, do you have the Sheets app?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dude, you can order your stuff. We can order it sitting right here, and it'll be ready, and we'll just grab it and go.
Have you ever watched Cheers?
I haven't watched Cheers in a long time. Do you remember Cheers?
Like when Norm walked in and the whole bar was like, Norm! That's going to be me when I walk into Sheets.
When you walk into Sheets.
Yeah, like, John! line. I'm like, hey guys, what's going on? I'll have the huge.
Yeah,
know,
nice.
Yeah. In fact,
I
I
like
probably won't even have to order off the app. Like they'll probably just like see my car pull into the parking lot. They're like, oh, hot dog time. I do love me some Sheetz hot dogs.
Aaron says Chicky Nugs are pretty good up there too.
I haven't the tacos are.
Now I haven't had those either.
Surprisingly good. Surprisingly good.
You think we can talk them into getting maple spam on the menu?
Oh man, that would be life changing.
Wouldn't it?
A schmegel with some spam. A schmegel with some spam.
Dude, that would be amazing. We're gonna have to spit the idea to them.
All right, we got it.
Like you said, we're gonna be on first name basis.
Absolutely, we are. I just saw the grand opening was posted today. Yes, wow.
All right, we're way too excited about this.
We are way.
Hey, but we are going to be spreading God's shalom in Sheetz.
That's right. Is spam part of God's shalom? I don't know that spam is God's best for all of God's people.
All right, now we're getting a little bit into the weeds here. I mean, when we get to heaven, we get a new heavenly body. And
is there spam in heaven?
If it brings you joy, there's spam in heaven.
Okay, I'm good with that.
We can discuss that topic further.
That would be
another time.
Another podcast episode.
Yeah.
Spam in heaven. Dude, it's been fun as always.
Oh yeah, great time.
Yeah, let us know how you're living out God's peace, and we will see you next time on the
later.
And that's a wrap for this week's Life on 11 podcast. As always, we hope that you will subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your feeds from. You can follow us on our social media channels by searching at Life on 11 podcast. And one of the best ways you can support what we do is to share this episode with your friends. We hope you will join us next time on the Life on 11 podcast, where faith is loud and God's truth is louder. If this episode stirred your spirit, share it with someone who needs a little hope today. Stay bold, stay rooted, and remember, we're called to not do the kingdom halfway. Keep living loud for Jesus. We'll see you next time.